Multiple dismissals without notice from Avon and Somerset Police over multiple incidents. Man, they've been busy while I've been away. More reasons Cressida Dick should stand down. As if we need any more reasons. But what the hell, we've got some for you anyway. Another prison officer lured into the arms of convicted criminal by the lavish lifestyle and future prospects of weekend visits. A 12-year-old boy finds armed police in his living room after reports of a gun, and his mum calls discrimination and now attempts to sue. Police forces refusing to police government advice on mask wearing, while Cressida Dick calls for people to shame non-compliance. This and so much more coming up. Don't forget, these reports are daily, Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you do appreciate the work I do and understand that these topics result in little to no YouTube monetization, please consider joining the channel Patreon for as little as £3 per month to help me continue providing this content. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back finally to another PAP Reports. It's Thursday, July the 30th, 2020. Well, after a week off to concentrate on setting up the studio to give me a dedicated space to put these reports together and record them, and after a few days of unplanned downtime after some pillock cut through my internet connection, I come back to an unnerving amount of stories. A number I'm not even sure I'm going to fit into this single report, but I'll give it a go anyway. Before I start, however, I want to thank all of you for bearing with me these past 10 days or so. I know some of you have emailed me over your cold turkey, but I hope that now I'm back, you'll tune in daily for your fix of corrupt cops, slimy security guards, monstrous MPs, and basically every other dodgy public servant or those in positions of authority who abuse those positions against us. Lastly, if you have sent me links to stories this past week, please forgive me for not giving a recognition at the start of this report as I normally would. This is simply due to time constraints, and from tomorrow onwards, once I'm all caught up, I assure you, you will be given a recognition for your help at the start of each report. So we're starting this report with events from last week, kicking off 40-year-old North Wales Conservative MP Rob Roberts, who has been called out by Labour and the Lib Dems for allegedly propositioning a 21-year-old intern. Reports are that Roberts, who recently split with his wife and who recently came out as gay, sent messages to the intern, messages the intern had self-described as making her feel incredibly sick after she had told Roberts that she was suffering with a mental health and was in an awful state. Roberts is said to have responded to that message. I was just thinking about fun times. Maybe if you thought of them too, it might help you. In other messages, Roberts said, "Don't ignore me when I'm making you feel better," before suggesting that she might want to fool around with no strings. And that you might come and visit me in London. Going on to say that he might be gay, but enjoys fun times. The intern said in an interview that I had had one of the worst days ever, and then I messaged him saying, "I'm fine, I'm not okay." And his solution to that was to proposition me. A Conservative Party spokesperson said there was an ongoing investigation into Roberts' conduct. While Mr Roberts has apologised for his behaviour and has been undertaking safeguarding and social media protection training, we are clear such conduct is completely unacceptable. Although there appears to be an ongoing investigation, opposition party leaders are calling for Roberts to be removed as whip for the Conservatives. More so as this isn't the first time that serious accusations of this nature have been made against him in his 7 months as a Tory MP. Now, to be fair, flirting with a younger woman isn't exactly a crime. You would think that as an MP, however, knowing that every move you make will be scrutinised and no doubt leaked to the public, you'd be a little bit more careful of your actions. Gay or not, I don't think there's a problem with flirting in itself, but doing it to someone who's just told you they're suffering mental health issues and knowing is almost certainly going to be leaked is an incredibly stupid thing to do, and certainly steps into the boundaries of trying to take advantage. Personally, I don't care what the political persuasion is. Someone that stupid, in my opinion, certainly isn't to be trusted acting on behalf of any member of the public. On the 7th of July, we spoke about Officer A, an inspector from Gwent Police. And it's always nice to see the transparency from our police forces. I'm sure they wouldn't hesitate to release our details if it was one of us. Well, Officer A was facing several misconduct charges relating to their behaviour. The charges relate to 3 separate incidents. In the first, Officer A was asked a number of times between July and October 2017 for a duty report about an investigation they were involved in, but didn't respond. In the second, they were stopped on the A4042 between Abergavenny and Lamthwist and was found to be driving without insurance, MOT certificate or vehicle excise licence. And the third charge was that Officer A had left their car unattended in the church car park for 8 weeks in June 2019. The inspector admitted lying about their phone not being in their possession and thereby suggesting they could not have seen missed calls or received voicemails, lying to their supervisor and suggesting to a detective chief inspector they had sent a report when they hadn't. Although he admitted to also driving without insurance, MOT certificate and a valid vehicle excise licence, he argued this did not amount to acting dishonestly and without integrity. He denied producing their warrant card to a police constable when they were stopped in order to influence their actions, and admitted abandoning their vehicle in a church car park for around 8 weeks without consent, without leaving contact details, allegedly causing an obstruction and inconvenience to legitimate users of the car park. And it certainly makes you think, if they're so blasé about lying over such irrelevant things, it's no shock he made it to Inspector. Well, Inspector A has had his day, and the misconduct hearing panel found that 3 allegations were proven, but the allegation regarding him showing his warrant card to another Gwent police constable to try and influence their decision after he was stopped was not proven. Now, if I was the constable who made that allegation, I'd be making a huge fuss about that, because that just intimates that I was lying. And if it was proven the allegation was false, then the constable who made that allegation should now be in front of a misconduct hearing themselves for breaching standards of honesty and integrity. They also said the officer's behaviour breached the force's standards of professional behaviour and risked undermining public confidence in the police. Gwent Police's Chief Constable Pam Kelly said, "I expect all of our officers and staff to act in accordance with Gwent Police's standards of professional behaviour. Anyone who does not adhere to these standards should expect to be held accountable. There is no place in Gwent Police for those who act dishonestly and without integrity, nor those who bring discredit to the force and undermine public confidence in the police. The behaviour of this officer fell below the standards we in Gwent Police expect of our officers and staff members. This behaviour also fell below the standards our communities expect from us, and the public deserve far better from those who protect and reassure them. The vast majority of our employees demonstrate the highest level of professional conduct at all times and work tirelessly to serve our communities with honesty and integrity." So I'll say this now without beating around the bush. Gwent Police, if the allegation about showing a warrant card to influence another constable's action was not proven, then the person making the allegation must have been lying. So when are we going to hear about their misconduct hearing? And if not, why not? On the 13th of July, we spoke about Avon and Somerset PC James McCall, who was dismissed last November after a tribunal heard he verbally abused colleagues whilst off duty and twice failed to turn up for work without a good excuse. The report on the 13th mentioned how McCall was appealing his dismissal for gross misconduct. Well, after his appeal, which took place on Thursday the 23rd of July, it seems that McCall is still going to have to sign off for his universal credit, as his appeal was not upheld. The appeals tribunal was told that McCall was suffering from mental health issues at the time of his misdemeanours. But the panel concluded that his dismissal was the correct course of action. Now, I'm glad the tribunal have seen through the overused mental health defence and stuck by their guns, so to speak. Not that I'm in any way diminishing the fact that mental health is horrible and a serious infliction, but when you hear the same tired line from every single police constable who's in the shit, it really does start to lose its effectiveness. And yet again, with Avon and Somerset Police, these guys really have been busy. And surprise, surprise, yet again, transparency shining through the force as they decide to keep the public servant's identity anonymous. In fact, it was ruled that no one involved were to be identified, including the businesses, their corporate officers and staff. The former constable, only being identified as Officer W, had already resigned his position with the force before the misconduct hearing took place, even though he still denied the allegations at the hearing, which obviously not only saved him some time, but no doubt his pension and his CV from having dismissal written on it. In fact, in a written submission to the panel, Officer W said, "The misconduct of officers involved in this investigation means I cannot possibly hope to have a fair hearing." That's not ironic at all, is it? The allegations of gross misconduct towards Officer W were proven for failing to disclose he had business links with a man known to have connections with organised criminals. Along with being associated to the unsavoury character, Officer W was said to have received large amounts of sums from companies into his personal bank account before passing that money on to other companies. He was also given luxury cars to drive, including Mercedes, Audis, BMWs and Range Rovers. Officer W's pleas, however, fell on deaf ears, as the panel ruled that Officer W had breached professional standards of honesty and integrity, confidentiality, conduct, orders and instructions, which amounted to gross misconduct, and that had he not resigned already, he would have been dismissed. 29-year-old Sussex PC Richard Harris, who, on the 25th of August 2017, hit and killed 79-year-old David Ormisher on a pedestrian crossing, had his gross misconduct hearing, which was held before I took time off to build the new studio. The hearing heard that he was in fact travelling almost 3 times the speed limit whilst on his way to an emergency call, when a radio transmission explained that the call was no longer an emergency, but he continued to speed with his blue lights and siren, narrowly avoiding several vehicles before ploughing into David Ormisher on a pedestrian crossing. The IOPC investigated and found that there was enough evidence to put the case to the Crown Prosecution Service in August 2018. However, the CPS took over a year to come to the conclusion that they would not be pressing charges against the constable. Seems fair. Anyway, Harris was cleared of gross misconduct relating to the speed he drove at and narrowly crashing into 2 other vehicles, but 3 of the 5 misconduct claims against him were upheld, and he was issued a final written warning, meaning that Harris, who has probably had an extended holiday at the cost of the taxpayer, is now able to resume his career. Inspector Webb said frontline officers need more protection from the uncertainty of investigations by the Independent Office for Police Conduct. And the public need more transparency and more impartiality when it comes to investigations into police. So a final written warning for taking someone's life. Can't be bad, can it? Back in February and March, we spoke about Thames Valley Police Inspector Ian Kane, who allegedly made a false robbery report to another police force, claimed on his insurance and lied about the amount of money owed to him from a police station tuck shop. Dear oh dear. Well, Kane has had his misconduct hearing over the allegations, which are said to be so serious that they amount to gross misconduct, which could see him dismissed without notice. Now, although the misconduct hearing started over a week ago and was only due to run for 2 days, there's no update as yet on the outcome. However, a quick search shows that he still claims to be working for the police force, as shown on his LinkedIn profile. I will try and find out the outcome of this hearing, as Kane is, or at least was, on suspension, no doubt getting paid to sit at home. So I think knowing the outcome to this is in the public interest, seeing as we're all paying him to do so. As if we ever needed another reason to call for Cressida Dick to step down. But here's one anyway. Met Police Commissioner Dick appeared on LBC Radio last week, where she said that she doesn't accept that a video of athlete Bianca Williams being stopped in London reveals racism. Personally, I agree. That video, that small clip, didn't reveal racism. It simply revealed that a vehicle with black occupants was stopped. But that's not the point of this report. In the LBC phone-in, one caller said, I believe that what happened with Bianca Williams in the footage revealed there is still problems with racism within the police force. Would you commit to more positive action to recruit more black, ethnic minority and all diverse recruits into your police force? In reply, Cressida Dick said, absolutely. As I said, we already have 8,000 people in the Met who are from black and minority ethnic backgrounds. 5,000 officers, which is an absolute record, and more than 50% of the BAME officers in the country are in the Met, and I want more. We've been doing all kinds of positive action to get more. We're recruiting now, and we're looking for more and more. In the last year, we've had record numbers coming in, which is brilliant. Now, I really wish people would stop concentrating on skin colour and start looking at their actual ability to do the damn job instead. If a black and a white person attend for one position, it shouldn't matter what ethnic background. What should matter is whether they are actually capable to do the job, whether they are trustworthy and impartial. If that means the black applicant gets the job, then so be it. Likewise, if the white person gets the job. Will people please just stop moaning about skin colour and start thinking about what is actually important? Because the ethnic background of somebody sure as shit isn't. Now for the reason why I think this shows why Dick should step down. After Bianca Williams was stopped, she accused the Met of racial profiling after she and her partner were pulled over and handcuffed whilst driving with their baby in the car. She said officers spoke to Ricardo dos Santos like he was scum, dirt on their shoes. Well, there's nothing unusual there, Bianca, and that's certainly nothing to do with your ethnicity. But what gets me is the fact that Cressida Dick actively and publicly apologised to Bianca Williams for the distress caused to her. She said that, "I don't personally accept that what we have seen so far in the video in relation to the stop of Miss Williams reveals racism. As you know, the Independent Office of Police Conduct are looking at this, and I of course wait to see what they say. However, having seen some of the footage myself, I would say that any officer worth their salt would have stopped that car that was being driven in that manner." Although we're obviously still waiting to see the evidence of that driving allegation made by the police and also the rest of the footage from Bianca Williams after she cleverly only uploaded the bit that showed police being their usual aggressive selves. Cressida Dick continued, "Secondly, my professional standards people have looked at it and they don't see any misconduct. What I do recognise is, of course, is that Bianca Williams was quite patently, as we all saw in the video which went viral, distressed by the whole matter. And as one human being to another, I apologised to Bianca Williams. Nobody likes seeing somebody distressed, whatever the circumstances. We are a compassionate organisation." Now, that right there is why I think Dick is not fit for purpose. Many people watching this video will have had interactions with the police where the police have caused unwelcome and unwarranted distress to themselves or others. People who will not have been given an apology for the distress caused, especially if they are said to have been guilty of something, and, unfortunately, even if they've been found not guilty. So this shows me the difference in the way that the police will deal with someone who's in the public eye versus someone who's simply a member of the public. This is the head of the police force, an organisation that's meant to be impartial and treat everybody the same under the law, but yet clearly shows the disparity between different social groups. I do stand firm in my belief that this was not racially motivated stop, in that they weren't being malicious. It may well have been due to something along the lines of, in a particular area, black people may be the highest offenders of certain crimes, in which case you would expect the police to be doing their job. Now, I'm not saying that the police did their job properly, by the way. There is simply not enough video to prove or disprove that. Although, as I've already said, the video does show them being their normal aggressive bullies that we have come to expect. I said it when the apology happened. Dick messed up. There is no way she should have apologised if Williams and her partner were in fact doing what's been suggested, driving on the wrong side of the road and failing to stop. But again, we're still lacking any confirmation of any of the claims made by Williams or the Met Police. So I guess only time will tell. 45-year-old Mark Smith, who was once dubbed a one-man crime wave due to his 23-page criminal record, is suing Northumbria Police because a detention officer told people he was a burglar. Smith claims that detention officer Alex Coulson violated his human rights by telling members of the public about his past. Coulson resigned from the force after the complaint was made, a complaint in which Smith insists, "I want every last penny. He had no right to tell people about my past. I admit I burgled people before, but that was almost 20 years ago. But this is harassment, and the police are making my life hell." Last January, Smith said a drunken Coulson threatened him in Talbot discount stores. He stormed in and asked the shopkeeper if he knew I was a burglar, then said, "If any houses got done around here, I will kill you." It was awful behaviour. I moved to South Shields for a clean break where nobody knows me. I should be able to start a new life, but he wouldn't leave me alone. It is affecting my mental health, and the way he acted was disgraceful. Now, although I do stand up against infringements of people's rights, I do find myself asking, maybe this is karma. When I wonder if Smith ever wondered about the rights of the people he burgled or the mental health aspect of those he burgled. It was claimed that Smith was the agitator in the interaction after calling Coulson a pig, but when asked if he admitted bringing up Smith's past, Coulson said, "Yes, I said he was a burglar and probably shouldn't have. But it's true, he is a burglar." An investigation by Northumbria Professional Standards found that Coulson did have a case to answer for misconduct, stating his actions could amount to bullying and harassment. Now, while all of this happened last year, it's only now that news of this civil claim has been released. Smith's lawyers are now seeking unspecified damages from the force for comments they say were meant to degrade their client. The legal papers allegedly state that the officer disclosing the offending history of the claimant was not done for a specified, explicit or legitimate purpose. Rather, it was done maliciously to degrade the claimant. They argue there was clear interference into his right to a private life under Article 8 of the 1998 Human Rights Act. The Act states public authorities such as the police can't interfere with people's private lives unless it is for things such as preventing crime, national security or public safety. And we're going to keep an eye on this one as it seems quite an interesting case, and of course any additional information I will bring to you when it's available. 35-year-old Gemma Breen, a prison officer at HMP Prescoed, has been given an 8-month prison sentence, suspended, for 18 months, along with a 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew and tag for 4 months. It was uncovered that Breen, whilst working in the prison, was in a relationship with Stuart Mark Davis, who was serving 5 years for possession of Class A's. Using friends' email accounts, she and he contacted each other regularly and even arranged to meet up when he was allowed out on day release. And it was this stupidity that foiled their relationship, as a picture of Breen and Davies posted online and taken while Davies was on his day release was seen by Davies' ex-wife, who raised the alarm. Breen was said to have had direct control of Davies in her employment, training and education role and arranged to meet up with him when he was allowed out on home leave. Prosecutor Stephen Donoghue told Cardiff Crown Court their relationship was revealed on November the 1st last year, when Mr Davies' ex-wife was directed to a photo of him and his new girlfriend after it was posted online. Messages found on her phone showed they had been in a relationship since the beginning of October, with a series of messages sent to him from the phone using the email account of her father's girlfriend. Another account belonging to a friend was even used to email the prison's IT support unit to complain that messages sent from the prison site were not being downloaded properly. Breen eventually resigned from her job on December the 1st last year before pleading guilty to misconduct in a public office. Judge Michael Fitton told Breen, "The warning signs should have been coming up. You saw them, you ignored them. You got into something deeper than you could manage." Yeah, like balls deeper. West Midlands Police. They certainly seem to love hiring the bullies, the big boys, the Billy Big Bollocks. Until, that is, they're caught out. Coventry-based response officer PC Sunil Nar, those of you as old as I am should get why I find that name interesting, especially as we're talking about police, seems to have an affinity for going hands-on, and who has now, thankfully, been shown the door by being dismissed for gross misconduct after kicking and punching one man and hitting another with a baton. No, this isn't PC William Sampson from South Yorkshire Police, but I am still keeping my ear to the ground on that one. Sunil Nar punched and kicked a suspect after being called to a domestic incident in April 2017. He was charged with assault in relation to the violence, but was found by a court to have no case to answer. Then in August 2017, officers reported their concerns about PC Nar's use of force over an incident when a man was detained after a police chase. The man was injured after being hit in the head with a baton by PC Nar. Response officer Nar, who was based in Coventry, was charged with wounding but cleared by a jury, which kind of goes some way to proving that people's misconceptions of the police cloud their judgment. No doubt the jury have all seen far too many cop reality shows that's desensitised them to the abuse and violence dished out by the police. Although the courts found him not guilty, the IOPC considered that a panel could find a misconduct in PC Nar's behaviour, and a gross misconduct hearing was convened to hear the allegations. That hearing took place last week, where gross misconduct was proven in both incidents, and so PC Nar was dismissed without notice. Detective Chief Superintendent Chris Todd, head of West Midlands Police Professional Standards, said, "The use of force by PC Nar was completely unacceptable and went against the training that all officers have in safely bringing suspects under control. While the criminal case against him did not result in convictions, the burden of proof at a misconduct hearing is lower, and officers are bound by strict rules on the use of force, which PC Nar clearly breached." So the burden of proof is lower, yet it seems so difficult in many serious cases for misconduct panels to find guilt, even when a court does. Todd continued, at a time when police use of force is under scrutiny, nationally and internationally, it is more important than ever that our communities have confidence in our professionalism. When officers go beyond what is reasonable, they face serious consequences. Yeah, of course they do. A 12-year-old boy was arrested last week by the Metropolitan Police after he was seen with what appeared to be a gun. The family were asleep when armed police and sniffer dogs raided the home of Kai Ajipong. I don't even know if that's how it's pronounced. There you go. The 12-year-old was then handcuffed and led away to a waiting police van. Kai was said to have been playing on a laptop on the sofa next to his mum, but a passerby who is said to have looked through the family's half-drawn blinds reported seeing a black male with a gun to the police. And before people jump on and start with this discrimination, let's think about it logically. Regardless of anyone's colour, if you saw someone with what you thought was a firearm, you'd be bloody concerned. Kai's mother Alice described the incident as terrifying and humiliating. And of course it would be for anyone. However, she has now made a formal complaint against the Metropolitan Police. She said, "I'd fallen asleep. I woke up to my son opening the door and officers were pointing guns at him, and he was immediately arrested. There must have been about 25 police officers, 10 armed officers with weapons with red laser lights. All I could see was police cars and lights. I told them almost straight away that there were no weapons in the house, only a toy gun belonging to my son. But we were shouted at to put our hands above our heads and walk one by one out into the street. We were all terrified. They then ransacked my home, which took a while because it is 3 floors, and we just had to stand outside on the road as my neighbours watched all the commotion. It was really humiliating." Kai, a Year 7 pupil, was eventually de-arrested and allowed back into his home, but his mother said the ordeal has left him shaken. Kai said, "When I opened the door, they said get on the floor and put your hands above your head. And then they handcuffed me and put me in the police car. The handcuffs really hurt and I asked them to loosen them, but they wouldn't, and I had marks around my wrists when I took them off." Kai added, "They arrested me for having a firearm and I told them I don't have a gun and I've never seen a proper gun in real life before." His mum added, "He's a little boy who was sitting in his own home, but he was treated like a criminal. As a young black boy, it's just an occupational hazard, really." Oh, come on. There's something wrong with society if you can be at home not breaking any laws, but in a nanosecond police can burst in and put you and your loved ones' lives at risk. "This is not America, it's London," she said. And that may well be the case, but London is one of the worst, if not the worst place for gun and weapon crimes in this country. So are you saying that because you're a black family, the police shouldn't act? I'm sure you'd be singing a different tune if that was the case and BAME folk were simply allowed to get away with anything because of their ethnicity. Moron. Kai's mother said she received an apology from the superintendent following day that said the level of police action was justified. And so it begins. Well done, Cressida. This is what you've started with your apology to Bianca Williams. Don't get me wrong, a simple apology from the police when they do make mistakes is something that we should always have. It certainly would help in many cases, but now it seems that the police are only sorry when it comes to dealing with BAME folk, even if there is a justified reason for their interaction. Kai's mother called the police response disproportionate and criticised their lack of professionalism, claiming, "I would say that again, I struggle to see how there was professionalism when actually it was a toy gun." Although they didn't know it was a toy gun before they knew it was a toy gun, at which point they de-arrested the boy. Look, I think we have to be proportionate when discussing these stories, and as much as I know the police balls up in many situations, there are some that we have to understand are going to be frightening and worrying. But without them, people would be running amok. It's all very well saying you're offended by the police making entry to your home because of an alleged gun, but if it was you who called the police over what you believed to be a weapon and they did nothing, well, I think we all know how that would pan out. My issues are not with the police protecting the public. In fact, I wish they did it more often, but if there is belief that a weapon might be in a property, then for the safety of the public, they need to take action, especially as gun crimes are increasingly prevalent. However, if they had acted the same way over many other offences, I certainly would be calling them out. I'm not sure it's an abuse of power if there was concern of a firearm at the property, in my opinion, and I also don't think the police would have acted differently if it was a call about a white man with a gun. But as always, I tell you what I think, I don't tell you what I think you want to hear. She has now employed the help of Ian Gould as she attempts to sue the Metropolitan Police for racial discrimination. A police spokesman said, as is normal protocol in the circumstances, armed police were alerted and subsequently attended the address in Somers Town around midnight. A male in the property was arrested on suspicion of possession of a firearm, taken to a police van outside the house. The other residents were escorted out of the property whilst a search was conducted. In the process of this, officers found an item which was identified as a toy BB gun and not a firearm. He added the officers immediately de-arrested the youth, and he and the other members of the family returned into their address. Following the incident, a senior officer from the Firearms Command contacted the teenager's mother to discuss her concerns. He added the Metropolitan Police Service takes all allegations of racism extremely seriously and is clear it has no place within the organisation. Where we need to review or investigate the conduct of individual officers, we will do, as we understand this is essential for community confidence around impartiality. The Met said an internal review has not identified any misconduct issues, but added there had been a mandatory referral to the Independent Office for Police Complaints. Devon and Cornwall Police have decided that they are going to do their job, rather than following the infringing recommendations made by the government over the wearing of face coverings. The force announced that they won't crack down on shoppers failing to follow the advice in stores and shops, after retailers also said they would not get their staff to intervene. Even though there is a potential money spinner with fixed penalty notices starting at £100 for not wearing one, police said its officers don't have time to respond to calls about face coverings unless they involve a public order offence. Now, this concerns me, as we already see and hear people all the time making up claims to the police about how their feelings have been hurt because someone isn't doing what they've been unlawfully ordered to do. I think that the police will get pissed off with stores phoning them up and will take that frustration out on the members of the public they turn up for, which of course proves the point that the police are more concerned about corporate policing than public policing. Andy Simmons, chairman of Norfolk Police Federation, who seems to be forgetting the law himself, has also said he expects the onus of enforcing a mandatory wearing of face masks to fall with shopkeepers, as the constabulary does not have the capacity to do it. Mr. Simmons said, "We want to make it clear what our expectations are in terms of our involvement. We will step back and allow the shops to administer and manage the new regulations with clear signage. They've been very good up to now in managing their customers with social distancing, so I expect they will do the same here and make it very clear. No mask, no entry." Alison Hernandez, Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall, said the expectation is that they, police officers, will only come if there is disorder or violence or something associated with it. They're not going to come to every phone call that someone is not wearing a mask. Partly that will help with the street marshal teams, because that will help to encourage people to follow the guidelines as well. She added that they'd come up with the idea of street marshals because having armed response officers patrolling beaches looks a bit policey. Andrew Goodacre, CEO of the British Independent Retailers Association, told The Telegraph, "This is not the role of retailers, and we would be concerned any such enforcement may lead to a further increase in the number of threats and abuse shop workers in the UK are currently experiencing." Well, Goodacre, simple resolution to that problem: stop being a dick. Not only have you zero powers to enforce anything on anyone, you also have zero powers to demand any information from anyone regarding why they're not wearing a face mask. In fact, if you prevent anyone from shopping because of it, then you could very likely see yourself with multiple lawsuits under the Equalities Act. A survey by the Institute of Customer Service has found that 3/4 of those in the service industry said they'd faced abuse from customers since the virus outbreak, and more than a quarter reported that they'd been physically attacked whilst working. And while I clearly don't condone attacking anyone, I can't say I'm surprised. Who is going to be happy being told they can't shop for their kids and family by a store clerk who has no powers and no authority over any member of the public? Either you allow everyone to choose whether they wear one or not, but allow entry to everyone, or make it your store policy to only allow those with face masks, such as some pubs and bars won't allow work clothes. If it's done as a national policy and in all stores, there's little anyone can do except go to another store for their shopping. But let's face it, you won't half take a hit in the pocket if you did that, so I can't really see any of the major retailers doing it. Instead, they'll simply use their staff as cannon fodder under the threat of dismissal if they don't tell people they have to wear a mask. I am, however, glad to hear that places such as Asda, Co-op, Costa and Sainsbury's have refused to question customers on their face masks. I still think anywhere that tries to prevent you from entering unless you divulge personal medical information should be boycotted. The trial over a death of Ipswich town striker Dalian Atkinson after he was tasered has been set back by a year due to coronavirus. 41-year-old PC Benjamin Monk and 29-year-old PC Ellen Batley Smith charged with manslaughter and assault causing 41-year-old PC Benjamin Monk and 29-year-old PC Ellen Batley Smith, charged with manslaughter and assault causing actual bodily harm, respectively, were due to face trial on September 14th. However, due to coronavirus, the trial date has been set for Easter 2021, with a provisional date of April 12th. Atkinson, aged 48, died after being tasered outside his father's house in Telford in August 2016, although Black Lives Matter must have been on holiday then, as I don't remember riots and marches back then. Birmingham Crown Court Judge Melbourne Inman QC said social distancing measures create significant restrictions for trials, adding in this case the planning is significant given the obvious number of witnesses and their nature. Everybody that is touched and concerned by this case is under considerable pressure and stress. I also have no doubt Mr Monk and Miss Batley Smith wish some certainty to know when their trial will take place. Atkinson's family listened to the hearing via Skype and said they backed relisting the trial date as soon as possible. Do you remember this video?
Did you notify West Yorkshire Police that you
Yes.
were going to go? Yeah?
Yeah.
This Friday?
Yeah,
And was that to some religious sites in Bradford, is that right?
it's to the mosques in Bradford and Leeds.
Mosques in Bradford and Leeds?
Yeah, because from what I've read in the local newspapers, they're flouting the stay-at-home rules. So am I supposed to stop being... Once I've been given key worker status by the government as a journalist, and you're now saying you don't want me to go and do that job?
No, what I've said to you is that that wouldn't be deemed a necessary journey.
But in whose opinion?
In the
It can't be in yours, because with respect, you don't make the law.
Well, it seems that the police are still not interested after police in Blackburn said they wouldn't be investigating a breach of COVID regulations after 250 people attended a funeral at a mosque, even though the imam who led prayers allegedly tested positive for COVID after the funeral, which took place on July 13th. The mosque committee has said police and public health officials were investigating the breach of a maximum of 30 allowed at a funeral, but Lancashire Police said the case was one for public health officials alone. Just one to remember the next time the police come knocking at your front door for an illegal gathering. Mosque chairman Mir Zaman told the BBC it was their first funeral since lockdown and accepted they'd made a mistake. He explained he mistakenly thought there were no restrictions on numbers if hygiene and distancing measures were in place. Yeah, I can't see that excuse working for everybody. The imam who led the prayers at the funeral on 13th of July tested positive for COVID-19 and is said to be recovering from the virus. In an email to worshippers, the mosque committee said around 250 participants attended the funeral prayer. There is a possibility that other attendees may also have been infected at the janazah prayers. Most new coronavirus cases have been among Blackburn's South Asian community, public health officials have said. And for the next month, the area's 148,000 residents have been told to observe the rules in a bid to avoid a Leicester-style lockdown. A Hertfordshire police constable has been referred to the IOPC after being filmed by a member of the public telling a detained teenager to let go of my hand or I'll fucking smash your face in. The incident, which took place on July 14th in Hatfield, was as a result of a boy allegedly acting suspiciously and then running away as police tried to stop him. The force said he was arrested on suspicion of drug possession with intent to supply and assaulting a police officer with intent to resist arrest before being released. The boy's mother, of course, said she believed it was racially motivated elements to the incident. She said her son, who is of mixed race, was with two friends, a black boy and a white girl, at the time of his arrest. The police officers pulled up next to all three of the children. They separated both the black boys, and all my son heard was, "We're cuffing him," she said. "I can't see how you can stop two black children and let the white girl with blonde hair just walk away." As much as I don't like to stick up for the police's actions, separating a woman from men in a crowd is a tactic the police use in a lot of incidents to ensure that the female is not there under any kind of duress. Now, I'm not condoning the fact that it makes every man detained look like he's abducted somebody, but I have to be objective and say that this action alone should not be deemed as being racially motivated, in my opinion. On the level of force the officers had used, she said, all I can explain it as is brutal force on a child. An IOPC spokeswoman said, "We received a referral from Hertfordshire Constabulary on the 17th of July. We are assessing it to determine if IOPC involvement in any investigation is required." Isn't it weird how us honkies can only involve ourselves in race and ethnicity and get away with it if it's to discriminate against ourselves? Well, it seems that West Yorkshire Police Chief Constable John Robbins has also figured that out and is now planning on discriminating against white people applying for jobs within the force. Robbins said he was concerned at the lack of representation within the force following a discussion about the Black Lives Matter movement in a meeting, expressing frustrations at legal guidelines in recruiting candidates based on ethnicity. Now, I can't say I know anything about any legal guidelines that would make your ethnicity an issue when applying for the police, although I do know of common sense guidelines of hiring people based on their skill rather than their skin colour. Mr. Robbins said that one good thing that could also come out of the protests reignited last month following the killing of George Floyd was that once and for all we need to apply positive discrimination to certain applicants in the police, provided those people met the requirements for joining the force, and while turning away fully competent and qualified individuals, they could be replacing them with borderline competent or qualified individuals just because they're BAME. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying that BAME folk are borderline anything. They're just as capable as us honkies. But what I'm saying is that in the rush to virtue signal, they will overlook someone's skill and replace them with someone who's not quite as good at the job, just so they can appear to be doing the right thing. I would be saying exactly the same if it was the other way round. An idiot white plod were being recruited over much more competent and skilled BAME applicants. I would have a serious issue with that too. I don't want people on our streets that are mediocre and will simply obey orders. I want people with brains, a conscience, people who can relate to the public and can engage with them, building trust and relationships. And I certainly don't care where they're from, so long as they can do the job. But publicly announcing that some people won't get the job because they're white is discrimination, and is the same discrimination that the Black Lives Matter movement was said to have been started to fight against. Discrimination is discrimination, regardless to who it is against and for what reason. Positive discrimination is a phrase made up by people because most people hearing it will simply go along with it rather than question it. I mean, can you imagine if Calvin J. Candy had told Django that Broomhilda wasn't allowed to leave Candyland with him and Dr. Schultz because of positive discrimination? Do you think that Django still wouldn't have gone back and killed them all before blowing the house up? No, me neither. There should be no discrimination towards anyone, including this so-called positive discrimination. The most recent figures from this month show that 6.1% of West Yorkshire police officers are currently BAME, compared with 18.2% of the country's overall population, based on the 2011 census statistics. That's only 10 years out of date. Couldn't that just be because the BAME community know what threatenous scum the police are and don't want to be a part of it? Why does it have to be because someone somewhere is being discriminative towards them? I haven't seen any reports of people being turned down by the police force because of their ethnicity, apart from white people. So where the hell is this coming from? Mr. Robbins added, positive discrimination is what happened in Northern Ireland on the basis of religion, and that's what needs to happen in the police on the basis of ethnicity and underrepresented groups. However, that's for legislators to change. I cannot do anything about it locally, otherwise it would be illegal and I would have done it by now. You note in harsh terms, do we think that anything that's occurring now is actively encouraging young black men and young black women to join the police services when the narrative is about institutional and structural racism and discrimination? So that's why if some positive comes out of it, it's got to be that. I can honestly, hand on heart, say I think we try far harder than nearly every other public sector organisation, and we learn and we adapt and we look and we listen, but we're still taking fairy steps toward, and we want it to be so much more and so many more people to at least fucking hell. I can honestly say, hand on heart, that I think we try far harder than nearly every other public sector organisation, and we learn and we adapt and we look and we listen, but we're still taking fairy steps forward. And we want it to be so much more and so many more people to at least just get up to a representative group. What an arsehole. Just concentrate on getting people on board because they're good for the job, not because it makes you look good. You carry on down this road and you're going to have a police force that is even less fit for purpose. A Metropolitan Police Constable was in hot water last week after an armed response officer drove away from a scene with ammunition and equipment on the roof of his vehicle, which subsequently fell off into the road. The road was allegedly closed for 11 hours while police recovered the ammunition and ancillary items. What a cushy bit of overtime that was. I wonder how long it actually took them to clear the stuff up and how long they strung it out for. Scotland Yard said that the public were not put in any danger and no firearms fell from the roof. Inquiries established that the items were police issue and that they had been placed on the roof of an armed response vehicle and subsequently fell off when officers were responding to support other colleagues on a firearms operation. The Met's Directorate of Professional Standards has been informed and have established that this was human error, and the officer concerned has been spoken to and will be subject to an internal learning process. Going back to the topic of face coverings now, and that good old Metropolitan Police Commissioner Dame Cressida Dick is really doing what she can for police and public relations. This time, it's not virtue signalling, but rather she wants to shame people who don't wear face masks. Please do. I could do with someone shaming me over my disability. Just think of the human rights and civil claims that would bring about. Problem is, however, that she isn't talking about the police shaming those who are not wearing masks. Oh, no. She's suggesting that store employees and members of the public should do the shaming. Yeah, can you imagine how that's going to turn out? Cressida Dick says she hopes shoppers refusing to wear masks will be shamed into compliance, as calling the police should be a last resort. If store staff are concerned and have tried everything else, her officers will try to assist. Calling the police should be a last resort for dealing with the mask issue, but of course, the law is the law. She said, my hope is that the vast majority of people will comply, and that people who are not complying will be shamed into complying or shamed to leave the store by storekeepers or other members of the public. What a way to improve police-public relations. What a way to get the public on side. What a way to create crimes where there were none. I mean, if somebody tried to shame you in public because you're not wearing a mask and you have a legitimate health issue, which I might add, you can't prove, as doctors have been told not to give covering letters, how do you think that's going to turn out for the person trying to shame you? This is, in my opinion, the police's attempt to break down the public's togetherness even more. They've already created, over years, communities that didn't exist 20 years ago. Communities that pretty much all have opposing ideologies, which creates conflict in communities, keeping people fighting against themselves and preventing them from banding together and fighting the establishment. This attempt seems to be creating the divide between the sheep and those who refuse to comply or won't or can't comply with the government's plans, whatever they may be. This time, however, it will affect families because members of some families will be pro-mask and other members of same families will not be, which is going to create relationship breakdown. What seems to be exactly what the government are trying to achieve for some reason. I've already said it before, if someone wants to wear a mask and it makes them feel safe, then fine, great, no problem. Those people are likely going to be the people who are following the guidance to the letter. Although there are just some who put the masks on to look good in public, but simply don't give two tosses about it. But those who are following the guidance, if you genuinely believe that what you are being asked to do is going to protect you, then it shouldn't matter if some people aren't wearing masks. If you're protected, then what's the big issue? And of course, if you're following the government's advice, then it will save you. Whereas those not following the advice are going to get COVID and potentially die. That's not your problem, is it? So providing you're masked up, gloved up, and now have a disturbing compulsive disorder to sanitize your hands and everything you can 100 times a day, then it shouldn't really matter if everyone's wearing masks or if nobody but you is wearing a mask. This ridiculous call from Dick for members of the public to start shaming people is going to end very badly, and I can foretell spilt blood over this ludicrous statement, which is another reason Dick needs to step down before she's dragged down. 6 Essex police staff were suspended from work and an internal investigation is taking place following claims of offensive and inappropriate content being shared in a private WhatsApp group. The 2 officers and 4 staff from Chelmsford Police Station had their warrant cards and phones confiscated from them about 3 weeks ago, as it was deemed all 6 had crossed the line. Essex Police said in a statement an internal investigation is being conducted into discussions held on WhatsApp between 2 police officers and 4 members of police staff from Essex Police. Those in question have been suspended from duty while the investigation is carried out. It would not be appropriate to comment further at this time. However, it's been suggested that the internal investigation will not look into whether any criminal offences were committed. Yet again, Cressida Dick makes a fool of herself and shows she's not fit for purpose after initially telling her officers they could take the knee to show their support for the BLM movement, and now making a hasty retreat from those words of advice by telling the police not to take the knee. I mean, come on, Cressida, at least stick to a decision when you make one. Or better still, research your thoughts before you make a decision. This really doesn't show decisiveness and confidence. Cressida Dick said, I said we are not going to do that in a public order or operational situation, and every briefing after that for the protest included we will not be taking the knee. Taking the knee was popularised by NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who used the gesture as a way to respectfully protest during the US national anthem. Black Lives Matter protesters have also adopted it following the death of African-American George Floyd, which sparked a wave of protests across the globe. Various police forces had previously been told they should be prepared to take the knee to defuse any potentially violent protests. Hertfordshire Constabulary actually warned that not taking the knee may become the focus of the protesters' attention. Back in June, 2 Met police officers knelt while working at a protest in London after being encouraged by the crowd. In response to this, Commissioner Dick said she understood why those officers felt the need to show their support. She said, I haven't spoken to them personally, but I imagine that they thought in order to keep that bit of the crowd a bit quieter and to show some respect and humility, some respect for what had happened to George Floyd, they took the knee. However, she said she would not take the knee herself, as she considers herself a professional police officer. So basically suggesting that those who took the knee aren't professional. Way to throw them under the bus there, Miss Dick. She continued, you can see racing drivers, goodness knows who, footballers, people are taking the knee for all sorts of reasons. I wouldn't. I'm a professional police officer and I don't think we should in operational duties. Ken Marsh, chairman of the Metropolitan Police Federation, said people are entitled to personal views, but you should keep them outside policing. When you have a police uniform on, you should police without fear or favour. The National Police Chiefs Council don't seem to agree with that stance, however. A police standard ever since the inception of the Peelers, as they argued the decision to take the knee should be decided by individual forces and chiefs. No, it shouldn't. It should be a decision made based on the policing principles and whether or not it affects the way the public see the police. And let's face it, it certainly has changed the way the public see the police from all angles. If you're a long-time viewer of the channel, you will no doubt have heard me on occasions mention that you do not have to get out of your vehicle when stopped by police, unless you are under arrest or being detained. Well, it appears that the police are trying to take that right away from us, as police leaders have called for a change in the law to try to prevent officers like Andrew Harper being killed or injured during traffic stops. Now, personally, I don't quite see how a change in the law will make any difference on someone who's intent on getting away from the police. That will never change. And you can't be expected to take our rights away just because of a few instances where you get butthurt when you face people who know the law and simply don't bend over and lube up for you. The Police Federation wants drivers to be legally obliged to get out of their car when they are stopped. Tim Rogers, the organisation's lead for pursuits and driver training, said, "Our view is that if you have to stop a vehicle, then you should, in circumstances that are relevant, have a power to ask someone to get out of their car. Having no power to have someone exit from a vehicle is a concern." No, Timothy. No. Having the power to order someone out of their car is a concern. By all means, if there is a clear criminal act that is taking place or has taken place, then you have the power of arrest and detainment, which means you have the power to remove people from a vehicle. But giving the police more powers to arbitrarily abuse is never a good idea. I sure as hell will never advise anyone to get out of their vehicle for someone purporting to be the police, when it could be just some nut job trying to do something bad. Oh wait, that's just a description of the police, isn't it? But on a serious note, imagine a rapist who victims got away from because they refused to stop, refused to get out of their car. You make it obligatory and I guarantee you will see crimes rise. Assaults, thefts, carjackings will all increase because of the public's inability to think for themselves and simply follow your BS orders. I'm sorry that Andrew Harper died, but having the legislation to make it a crime not to get out of your vehicle will not stop that from happening again. Chairman of the Police Federation, John Apter, said, "What we see far too often is offenders who assault police officers or any emergency worker, who are then let off with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. They literally put two fingers up to the criminal justice system." Wow, John, are you beginning to get a sense of what it's like for the public now? Maybe you should take that feeling, pop it in a bottle, take it out with you, and every time you receive a complaint about some juiced up copper who thinks he's Dirty Harry and thinks he can get away with treating a member of the public with contempt and assault, I genuinely hope they don't get that power, because this would infringe on our right to be safe and will be used as yet another weapon in the police's arsenal of tools to punish people that simply don't respect their authority. South Yorkshire Police are taking a leaf out of neighbouring Lincolnshire Police's handbook when it comes to dealing with the elderly and infirm. You likely remember poor old John Wheatley, 78-year-old with dementia, who was filmed by his carers being mentally abused. You will also no doubt remember that although there was a video of at least one occasion this happened, Lincolnshire Police deemed it not enough evidence to pursue Tina Bardsley. I still think that decision was partly made due to the fact that Mr. Wheatley died, but, what do I know? Anyway, now South Yorkshire Police have reported that they will not be following up on claims of neglect at the cherry trees in Barnsley, even though they were provided with photos of apparent neglect. One photo is said to show 83-year-old Shirley Duffy left upside down in a chair. Police have said while the photos were inappropriate and unprofessional, officers had found insufficient evidence to support a criminal trial. Ms. Duffy's granddaughter, Leanne Lund, said the family had been left feeling gutted. She said, "We're absolutely outraged, disgusted. We didn't hear from the police for weeks, and then one of the PCs from the office rang us to say they were not going further. I feel very let down. The family are outraged, they're gutted." In a statement, South Yorkshire Police said, "As a criminal investigation will now be closed, no further police action will be taken against the 7 carers arrested. However, the carers remain suspended from work, and the matter will continue to be investigated by their care provider, Barnsley Council, and the Independent Care Home Inspectors, the Care Quality Commission." Police are investigating allegedly anti-Semitic comments posted by grime artist Wiley on his Instagram account. Wiley allegedly posted an Instagram video in which he said, "Crawl out from under your little rocks and defend your Jewish privilege." Personally, I can't see what's wrong with that myself. I mean, aren't a lot of people being heckled for their white privilege recently? What makes that okay, but calling out Jewish privilege not okay? I do believe there were other comments made, but I've yet had the time to find those. Wiley was given an hours-long ban after tweeting a stream of comments, but was back online on Saturday morning, telling followers he was back in action. However, he was then given a 7-day ban from Instagram. Twitter was also earlier accused of ignoring anti-Semitism, as his tweets were still visible 12 hours after they were first posted. However, a number of tweets have now been removed. Twitter said Wiley's account was temporarily locked for violating our hateful conduct policy. In a statement, it added, "Abuse and harassment have no place on our service, and we have policies in place that apply to everyone, everywhere, that address abuse and harassment, violent threats and hateful conduct. If we identify accounts that violate any of these rules, we'll take enforcement action. Meanwhile, Facebook, which owns Instagram, said in a statement about the Wiley's posts, "There is no place for hate speech on Instagram. We have deleted content that violates our policies from this account and are continuing to investigate." Wiley's manager, John Wolfe, said A-list management had cut all ties with the musician following the series of social media posts made on accounts belonging to him on Friday. The Campaign Against Anti-Semitism has asked police to investigate the content and called for Wiley's accounts to be shut down to prevent further outpouring of anti-Jewish venom. In a statement issued on Friday, a spokesperson for the campaign Against Anti-Semitism said, our crime unit has reported the matter to Metropolitan Police Service as we consider that Wiley has committed the offence of incitement to racial hatred, which can carry a substantial prison sentence. They added that they would be contacting the Cabinet Office to ask that Wiley's MBE is revoked. The spokesperson said Wiley has many hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, and we have seen today that many of them truly believe the unhinged hatred that he is spreading. So, when you're in the public eye, you're clearly not allowed an opinion anymore, unless that opinion fits the current narrative. I thought that human rights extended to all people, not just those who weren't successful artists. Clearly I was wrong. Now, I have a feeling that police forces across the country are about to commit millions of pounds worth of fraud. On Sunday, it was revealed that Merseyside Police will be getting reimbursed by the government for its PPE purchases at a cost of around £1.3 million. This comes after Merseyside's Police Commissioner Jane Kennedy joined with her colleagues to lobby the Home Office to refund all the costs which had been incurred by police forces during the COVID-19 crisis. On Thursday, July 23rd, the Commissioner received a letter guaranteeing that the money which the force had contributed towards the national stock of PPE for policing since March amounted to £1.3 million from Merseyside will be reimbursed by central government. Kennedy said, since the coronavirus epidemic hit the country, Merseyside Police has incurred costs now totalling £4.1 million over our normal budget. A significant amount of these costs, 1.3, was contributed to us to help create a national supply of COVID-19 related PPE for the police service across England and Wales. A further 1.1 million was spent on purchasing a range of specialist PPE equipment for use locally by Merseyside Police. The total cost of the epidemic so far also includes money to pay for officer and staff overtime, new IT equipment and licences required to enable staff to work at home, as well as additional funds to undertake the specialist cleaning of building and vehicles. These are costs we had not expected and that could have had major impact on our very carefully balanced budgets. Today's letter from the Home Office comes as a big relief. While it is not a promise to pick up the whole bill, it is a guarantee that we will be able to recover all the money we spend contributing towards the national supply of PPE, as well as a significant amount of the supplies we purchased to be used locally. I thank the Home Office for listening to me and my PCC colleagues and for recognising that it would be hugely detrimental to have expected local police forces to cover these unexpected and potentially disastrous costs. As always, though, the devil is in the detail. I look forward to receiving more information about exactly what we will receive and how much of the 1.1 million for local PPE we will be able to recover. In the meantime, I will continue to encourage ministers to recognise the necessity of picking up the full costs incurred by all police forces. Merseyside Police, like many forces, is currently recruiting and working hard to get back, if not to the staffing levels before austerity, then close to it. It would be disappointing if those efforts were sabotaged because of the unexpected costs of policing the COVID-19 crisis. And yet police forces across the country are still routinely photographed or videoed without any PPE. So I ask myself, where all the PPE has gone, seeing as so many police staff simply don't bother wearing it? I would suggest that before the government make claims such as reimbursing the full cost, they first investigate to make sure that they have actually been using them. Otherwise that would amount to fraud by false representation by the police. South Wales Police made a bit of a boo-boo on Sunday after armed officers raided a home on Blancladach Street, Cardiff, only to later be spotted around the corner at a house in Blancladach Place. I know I probably pronounced that wrong. Charlie Goff, who lives at the house that was raided wrongly, was on his way home at the time and when police burst in and smashed the door. There were 4 or 5 police cars outside the property, he said. They were all stood outside, ready to raid the house. He added, if I had been inside, it would have been terrifying. If they were just going to knock on the door and got the wrong house, it'd be no big thing, said Mr. Goff. But he said he thought police would double check when they were armed. A spokesman for South Wales Police said, following reports of a disturbance in Cornwall Street yesterday involving a group of men armed with weapons, firearms officers were making arrest inquiries in the Grangetown area of Cardiff. While looking for one of the suspects, officers unfortunately attended the wrong address. Officers apologised to those living in the house and have made arrangements for the door to be repaired. The force said 3 men in their 30s and a 16-year-old boy were arrested. A 23-year-old man suffered a non-life-threatening injury during the Cornwall Street disturbance. We spoke a couple of weeks ago about Scotland's proposed new hate crime laws and how bad this would be. Well, now a group representing Scottish police officers have claimed that the Scottish Government's plans for new hate crime laws could devastate the legitimacy of the police. Scottish ministers say the hate crime bill will offer greater protection for victims at a time when offences are on the rise. And they're on the rise because of silly laws like this, giving people the power to eliminate other people's ideas and opinions that they disagree with. The Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Bill aims to update the fragmented patchwork of laws covering the area and would extend it by creating new offences relating to stirring up hatred in relation to age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity and race. Don't forget species, because cats' lives matter too. Ministers say the bill will send a strong message to victims, perpetrators, communities and wider society that offences motivated by prejudice will be treated seriously and will not be tolerated. But the Scottish Police Federation said it would see officers policing speech and harm relations with the public. The Scottish Police Federation, which represents 98% of officers, warns that the bill could lead to police officers determining free speech and thereby devastating the legitimacy of the police service. The Federation said it could cause a significant increase in police workload and demand, complicating the law with new rules which are too vague to be implemented. General Secretary Callum Steele said police officers are all too aware that there are individuals in society who believe that to feel insulted or offended is a police matter. The bill would move even further from policing and criminalising of deeds and acts to the potential policing of what people think or feel, as well as the criminalisation of what is said in private. We do not for one second suggest that prejudice, racism or discrimination are desirable qualities in our society, but the need to address these matters when they reach a criminal level is met by laws already in place, and the cost of free speech of going further with this bill is too high a price to pay for very little gain. Now, I just want to say thank you. I've been saying this for what seems like ages now. There are already laws for slander, libel, causing alarm and distress, public order offences, and pretty much every other conceivable instance of where someone mightn't like something you have to say. And it's such a relief to hear someone else mention that there are laws in place already, and it's a huge cost to free speech. The Law Society of Scotland, the group which represents Scottish solicitors, said it had consistently backed proposals to modernise hate crime laws, but that there were major flaws which could prevent the bill from achieving its stated goals. It expressed fears that the bill presents a significant threat to freedom of expression, with the potential for what may be abusive or insulting to become criminalised. The Scottish Government has denied that the bill will impact on freedom of expression, saying that for an offence of stirring up hatred to be committed, it would have to be linked to threatening or abusive behaviour, which I'm under no illusion the top cops are already working on a method for their constables to abuse this new legislation, just like they do and have here in England with the Section 50 Police Reform Act. It's almost like a rehearsed line for police now because they're so used to pulling it out of the bag in instances where they feel unable to assert their authority. These new hate crime laws will no doubt be abused in the same way, with a rehearsed procedure to ensure that police are able to use the legislation in situations where it's not warranted. Hamza Yousaf, Scotland's Secretary for Justice, said this bar would be set very high and that any accusations would have to be proved beyond reasonable doubt. He said, I don't accept that this curtails free speech at all. Free speech in itself is never an unfettered right. We don't accept that people can go on speaking tours saying that women should be raped and children should be kidnapped. We just don't accept that freedom of speech is completely unfettered. But yet nothing is done about groups on Facebook where paedophiles openly discuss their perversions. But saying that women should be raped and children should be kidnapped is a no-no. What this does is create a protection for minority groups, he said, and vulnerable groups in our society against being targeted for hatred and being targets for hatred. A South Yorkshire police employee has been sacked for using social media to contact women he met through his policing work. The man, who has not been named, lost his job after a misconduct hearing where the panel heard that he had made contact with 2 members of the public, both women who he met through his policing work. South Yorkshire Police said he searched for the women on social media. A member of staff admitted to making contact with 2 members of the public he met through policing work. He has then used information obtained as a result of his policing work to make contact with the women using his personal social media. He also accepts that his contact was inappropriate. The misconduct panel found that the matter did amount to gross misconduct, and the most appropriate outcome was for the staff member to be dismissed without notice. Derbyshire Police Constable PC Andrew Newton has been dismissed without notice after being found guilty of gross misconduct. Newton failed to act diligently when attending a reported domestic incident and then provided false and misleading information to the force, action which breached policing standards of duties and responsibilities and honesty and integrity. At a misconduct hearing held at Derbyshire Constabulary Headquarters in Ripley, Newton accepted the breach of duties and responsibilities but denied any breaches of honesty and integrity. However, the disciplinary panel found the case proven and dismissed him without notice. Newton's misconduct hearing was held between June 22nd and June 24th, but barrister Nahid Asjed, chairing the hearing, decided that the hearing should be held behind closed doors, meaning that no one was allowed to attend who wasn't directly involved, and so it's taken a while for these details to come out. Gwent Police Constable Gareth Hodges faces dismissal at an upcoming gross misconduct hearing. Hodges is accused of pursuing a course of conduct amounting to harassment towards a woman known as Miss X, which he knew or ought to have known was unwanted and which caused her distress and alarm between May the 5th to 16th, 2019. It is also claimed PC Hodges breached Gwent Police's standards of professional behaviour after he was made the subject of a non-conviction restraining order over his alleged conduct towards the unnamed woman last July. The hearing will be held at the Force's Coombarn headquarters The hearing will be held at the Force's Coombarn headquarters on August the 4th and is expected to last for 3 days. A study has been carried out by the University of Exeter into how many police have suffered a traumatic brain injury resulting in the loss of consciousness, with results, unsurprisingly, showing that nearly 40% of police say they have. Many of which, no doubt, have had to say that to keep up with the facade or lose their sick pay. According to a pilot study, 39% of the officers have sustained this injury compared with 12% of the general public. It was said that officers with a history of brain injuries reported high levels of ongoing post-concussion symptoms such as headaches, memory problems and anxiety. And I find this extremely disturbing. That's almost 40% of the UK police force who could forget something vitally important or imagine something to happen when it didn't. Should these people be working in a role where their very actions could determine whether somebody's life is potentially ruined by a forgetful copper? Or somebody dies because a police constable has a meltdown when trying to deal with a psychotic member of the public? I get that this study and its report in the media is to try and get people to feel sorry for the police. But come on, people. What's more important here, a copper getting a smack or a copper who isn't fit for the job, doing the job? I was a chef for more years than I care to remember. I cut or burnt myself practically daily, far more than the general public. It comes with the job. I also noticed the report fails to compare police boo-boos with boxers or MMA fighters. They get battered far worse than any cops do. But I wonder if 40% of them report high levels of ongoing post-concussion symptoms such as headaches, memory problems or anxiety. Can you imagine a boxer's career if he got anxiety getting into the ring because he got knocked out and 40% of the police are whinging about a tap on the head? Guaranteed most of them never actually lost consciousness, but rather fancied a couple of weeks paid leave over something you can't prove or disprove. Professor Hugh Williams said, the main thing to take away from this is that we need to look after people who are in the front line of public protection. Traumatic brain injury has been extensively linked to mental health difficulties, including PTSD, depression and alcohol abuse. And there it is, justification if ever you needed it, for the police to abuse you or their position and blame it on the mental health aspect. However, it's important to let you know that near the very end of the report into this story, the reporter added, rather inconspicuously, just thrown into the conversation, that 2/3 of the traumatic brain injuries reported happened outside police work. It's also important to add that the study only took place on 54 police constables. 54 out of close to 124,000, and determines that 9 met criteria for PTSD and 21 met criteria for mild or more severe depression. I wonder how many met the criteria for narcissism. The UK government has actually admitted a mistake that would be very costly to anyone else, but no doubt will be allowed to slip through the fingers of the Information Commissioner's Office. I said it on the channel before, that there are huge confidentiality issues with the government's track and trace tools, and I was right. In fact, the government has admitted its contact tracing programme is unlawful in a legal letter which confirms it has been running in breach of data protection laws since it was launched in May. According to the legal letter, the government did not conduct a data privacy impact assessment, which is required to ensure that breaches of patients' information don't take place. The letter was sent in response to a legal challenge brought by Open Rights Group, ORG, against the government for failing to confirm whether it had met the required safeguards for the programme. Although the Department of Health and Social Care insists there is no evidence data has been used in an unlawful matter, it doesn't actually have to be used in an unlawful matter, it just needs to be breached. The letter from Department of Health and Social Care, which is dated July 15th, said the legal requirement is being finalised. The department said it is working closely with the Information Commissioner's Office to ensure data is processed in accordance with the law. The Department for Health and Social Care spokeswoman said NHS Tests and Trace is committed to the highest ethical and data governance standards, collecting, using and retaining data to fight the virus and save lives, whilst taking full account of all relevant legal obligations. Of course it is. That's why you failed to complete a mandatory assessment before starting to use it. And also while contractors working for NHS Test and Trace have been told they may be fired, following reports of dozens of staff sharing patients' confidential data on social media. The very basics of data privacy management, and they can't even get that right. And people still think the government are there to help them. South Wales Police Constable Sally Thomas has been found guilty of gross misconduct and shown the door after she lied about an incident in which a detainee sustained a head injury. The complaint was investigated by the Independent Office for Police Conduct, and during the course of their inquiries, PC Thomas was interviewed. The constable's evidence about what she had and had not seen as the detainee was taken to the police van was later found to be false, with her version of events being contradicted by body-worn video footage. The constable also failed to tell the custody sergeant at the police station that force had been used during the arrest and the detainee had suffered a head injury. The hearing panel considered the allegations that PC Thomas had breached the honesty and integrity and duties and responsibilities standards of professional behaviour and found her actions amounted to gross misconduct and therefore was dismissed without notice. G4S have spectacularly mugged the government off in a fraud probe, in which G4S now have to pay back to the government more than £44 million. The payoff is ultimately a settlement to avoid prosecution after substantially overcharging the government for tagged criminals, including some who had died. According to the Serious Fraud Office, G4S dishonestly misled the government in an effort to boost its profits. And this isn't the first time G4S has been dragged over the coals, and you would expect that after maybe the second or third balls up, someone would be asking serious questions. But no. After G4S became the first private company to run prison escort services, they lost 7 inmates in 3 weeks. A year later, a hunger striker escaped from Campsfield House Detention Centre, guarded by G4S. In 1997, it emerged G4S had transferred a prisoner between 2 vans on a petrol station forecourt. 3 prisoners escaped from Peterborough Crown Court in 2001. In 2011, G4S staff lost a set of cell keys just days after taking over Birmingham Prison. G4S staff put an electronic tag on criminal Christopher Lowcock's artificial limb. In 2012, the firm failed to train enough guards for the London Games, which meant 3,500 soldiers had to be recalled from leave. In March 2013, a G4S guard at Heathrow ordered Royal Navy engineer Nicky Howells to change out of a uniform before flying to the US because it was offensive. And even after all that, the UK government, who we put our trust in, proves themselves to be just as useless as G4S are by keeping them on and allowing them to rip them off. I bet you the entire contents of a G4S money van at G4S are still holding a contract with the government next year. Remember the story on the 6th of July about HMP Huel prisoner 51-year-old Timothy Slater, the guy with no legs who was handcuffed to either his bed or the guards whilst his internal organs systematically shut down until he died? Well, here's another example of despicable prison guards, as prison guards chained themselves to a 72-year-old lifer, Brian Matthews, moments after he suffered a fatal heart attack before escorting him from HMP Frankland to hospital after he collapsed outside his cell. A report by the Prisons and Probation Ombudsman criticised the prison for deciding that the ageing prisoner should be changed to a guard, one of two guards who escorted him to hospital. The escort chain, a chain with a handcuff at either end, was removed at the hospital and Matthews died the next day. The Ministry of Justice said it had issued new guidance to prisons following the incident. We are surprised that healthcare staff considered that a man of 72, who had just had a heart attack and was still very ill, had the ability to escape unaided from two escort officers, the Watchdog report said. Despite that advice, the senior manager assessed that Mr. Matthews posed a low risk of escape in these circumstances. We are concerned that he decided that Mr. Matthews should be restrained. A 2007 High Court ruling found that use of handcuffs or other restraints on terminally ill or seriously ill prisoners was inhumane, unless justified by security considerations. The Ombudsman has now urged the prison's governor to understand that legal position and that assessments fully take into account the health of a prisoner and are based on the actual risk the prisoner presents at the time. A spokesperson for the Ministry of Justice said the use of restraints during hospital visits is based on a robust risk assessment and designed to keep the public safe. New guidance has since been issued on how this should be used. A Greater Manchester Police Constable, 49-year-old David Bunting, was jailed last week for 3 months after he was caught on camera stealing £70 from a man whose home he was attending for a welfare check. Bunting of Rochdale couldn't do anything but admit theft after the footage was shared by the homeowner's sister on Facebook, and he was sentenced to 3 months jail at Preston Crown Court. Reports say that he is currently suspended from duty but is appealing his jail sentence. Don't you find it odd too that even after being found guilty in a court and being sentenced, he's only suspended? Surely after a guilty verdict, it should be game over for a career in the police for anyone. Oh wait, that's not what happens, is it? They have to work out if they can get round keeping him on first. Silly me. The UK and the US have agreed to amend what's been called an anomaly that allowed Harry Dunn's killer and Sokolis to claim diplomatic immunity as the wife of an actual diplomat. Harry Dunn was killed after he was knocked off his motorbike outside RAF Croton in Northamptonshire by Anne Sokolis. The change in the agreement between the UK and the US is not thought to be retroactive and so may not mean that Anne Sokolis will be bound by the new agreement, but it will fix what's called a legal loophole that's been identified. I struggle to believe it's taken so long to identify this loophole. I've watched enough Columbo to know that this thing happened, and I know nothing. Charlotte Childs, Harry's mother, vowed to continue the family's campaign to bring Mrs. Sokolis before a UK court. We always live with hope that one day she might just decide of her own accord to put herself on a plane and come back over here, she said. We definitely will keep the pressure up. The Foreign Secretary has said relatives of US staff at the airbase can face prosecution under the amended rules, where they may have previously been immune. The US State Department said the amendment was a reflection of our especially close relationship with the UK. Northamptonshire Police said it would continue working with British prosecutors to ensure Mrs. Sokolis was returned from the US to face court proceedings. Sakoulas was charged with causing death by dangerous driving in December. 55-year-old Devon bookshop owner Peter Churcher has been convicted of assault by beating for allegedly accidentally splashing water on Rosina Foster while he was tending hanging baskets from an upstairs window. However, magistrates found Mr. Churcher guilty after Plymouth Magistrates Court heard evidence from the victim's friend and another witness that it was deliberate and fined him £1,160. Assault by beating, by the way, is when someone commits common assault using violence. Speaking after the case, he said, "I was just watering my plants in the same way I've done for 20 years. I've done it thousands of times with no problems, but this time all hell broke loose. I heard a bit of noise outside. No one said stop watering, but I came down and saw the two women. They were not even really wet. They said I'd thrown water on one of them and soaked them through to the bone. The water doesn't even come out that fast of the spout, yet it was claimed in court she was drenched. The court convicted me on that basis. How can I drench the lady with water from such a small spout? They claimed it was assault by beating, and I've now got a conviction, God knows why. I've never been in trouble with the court. It is ridiculous. I looked it up and there is no mention of anyone else being charged for an offence like this. There was a case with a hose, but nothing like mine." Plymouth Magistrates dismissed his claim that the water ended up on Mrs. Foster by accident outside the shop in Bear, Alston, Devon last July. So where's the Crown Prosecution Service's public interest test? They love pulling that one out when it's a claim against a copper, but soon forget it when it's members of the public. Greater Manchester Police have opened an investigation over the level of service retired Greater Manchester firefighter Sam Smart received, saying that the level of service fell well below expected standards. Sam Smart spotted a youth with a blade arguing with other youths on the evening of Tuesday 21st of July on Moston Lane, Moston. He intervened to protect three boys, then chased after the suspect, who then turned on Mr. Smart, warning that he would cut him too. Mr. Smart reported the incident to Greater Manchester Police and alerted them that footage of part of the incident was at the CCTV of a shop nearby. After they failed to respond, Mr. Smart complained. In a bizarre exchange of text messages, the police threatened Mr. Smart with arrest for malicious communications after he told them he would deal with the CCTV himself and called them a joke. The operator replied with "good luck," to which Mr. Smart said, "You cheeky bastards." At which point the operator seized the opportunity for an arbitrary threat, which Mr. Smart replied he had already spoken to Manchester Evening News. The Greater Manchester Police operator responded immediately with keyboard warrior. The exchange ended when Mr. Smart sent a text at 8:57. If he was professional as I was, a firefighter for 31 years, this would have been resolved. Mr. Smart said, "I could not believe the police attitude in the text messages. I therefore made a formal complaint, going today to Force Headquarters in person to lodge it. They can't get round to checking the CCTV and finding the lad with a knife, but they have time to send daft text messages." In a statement, Greater Manchester Police said the level of service his victim received fell well below our expected standards, and for this we would like to sincerely apologise. We have reached out to the victim in this case to apologise and shall be thoroughly investigating the incident he reported. We would like to reassure the public that the actions of the individual involved does not reflect the diligent and professional manner that our officers and staff display each and every day. We have referred the incident to Greater Manchester Police's Professional Standards Branch for review. We would always encourage anyone who is a victim of a crime to report it to police. Do as I say, not as I do, as more officials break the very rules they're trying to impose on the rest of us. Luton Mayor Tahir Malik and councillors Asif Masood and Wahid Akbar are now facing calls to resign after they were captured breaking lockdown rules by attending a social gathering with 9 other men. The three were pictured on social media at a party in the LU4 area of the town, which, on Saturday the 25th of July, was designated an area of intervention by Public Health England because of spikes in COVID cases. I wonder why. In a statement, the three councillors said, "We attended what we believed was going to be a small, socially distanced gathering, in line with the government guidelines, but yet did not leave or encourage others to leave." Strange that. The leader of the Liberal Democrats group on the council, David Franks, said, "We are fuming about this. The mayor is not fit to hold that position, and the councillors likewise. This is a case of the rules are made for you and not for me." Of course it is. Isn't that the daily mantra that public officials repeat to themselves in the mirror or leaving for work to mug people off all day? A Durham police constable is under investigation after a video that appears to show him kneeling on a man's neck and punching him in the face was shared online. Police were called to reports of an assault taking place at 9:20 p.m. on July 24th. Police attended and discovered a 39-year-old man who was wanted for recall to prison. However, a video circulating on social media shows police constable throw a man to the floor and appear to punch him in the face. He then climbs on top of the man in a bid to detain him, along with a female colleague on a grass verge. The man is seen resisting officers, and the male police constable appears to briefly put his knee over his neck. Still on top of him, the officer appears to punch the man in the face as backup arrives. Confirmation from Durham Constabulary has been received that their professional standards department has opened an investigation. It is believed the constable has yet to be suspended from duty or put on restricted duty, and the case isn't being looked into by the IOPC. A spokesperson said, having viewed footage of the incident, Durham Constabulary has now referred the matter to our professional standards department for investigation. Given that this is now the subject of an ongoing investigation, it would be inappropriate for the constabulary to comment further at this time. Thank you so much if you made it all the way to the end of this video, and a big thank you to all of the supporters of the channel, especially the channel Patreon supporters. Your support is truly appreciated and really does help. That's all I have for you in this video. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. Until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police, and of course other officials. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.